thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. It is my pleasure that I have been given this opportunity to speak on this topic of valuation. Uh, we know that valuation had to be done over the years, but there have been some new concepts that have come up, new way of doing the valuation profession. You have to become a registered valuer. So I'll be discussing all these things, but then uh, this seminar has been arranged in a very nice manner, because see, the first topic that was based on values, so ethics come from values, and now the second topic is valuation. So in that way, there is a homogeneous uh, uh, there is a synchrony between the two topics of the day, and the valuation topic could be very boring, so I would be sharing some stories with you so that uh, it can be made interesting. So I believe you all will be with me, and I am speaking on this VCM forum on a topic for the first time. So and I cannot see the audience as such, so this is going to be a different experience. I believe you will be here with me, and whatever question you have, you can push in the chat box, which can be taken at the end of my deliberation. I'll not take much time. I think I'll be taking around 45 minutes, maybe, or maybe a little more, and then we can have the uh, discussion on the questions that you have. So, Mr. Shuman Chaudhary, can I share the screen now?
Yeah. Come on, carry on.
Okay. It's showing host disable. Just a minute. Yes.
58. 58.
Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, valuation overview and opportunities is the topic that has been assigned to me. So, if we have to understand valuation, then we have to understand a few things in it. And since I said that I'll be taking you through stories, so I must give a disclaimer at the beginning of this session that whatever stories I share or whatever photos I show, this has nothing to do with any religion. These stories are only for a better understanding, and this is not to promote any religion or to defame any religion. So um, let us first understand what is value. So valuation though we can do, but let us understand what is value first. So before that, let me so that you can understand what are the key concepts or key things, let me share a story first. So we have here the king of the heaven, the king of Swarg, Indradev. So once upon a time, what happened? Indradev did not have much work to do. So
Sumanji, please mute, except Devanji, please mute.
Divine, unmute yourself. Divine, unmute yourself.
Yes, now. So once upon a time, what happened? Indradev, he got bored, and he was thinking, what should I do? And he said, let me build a grand palace for myself. So he called in for God Vishwakarma, and he said that, please uh, build a grand palace for me. So Vishwakarma ji started his work and a grand palace was built. So then Indradev came to visit his new palace. He saw its palace. The palace was grand, the palace was big enough, but Indradev said that no, 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 this palace is not as big as I want, as grand as I am. So he asked Vishwakarma ji to build another one. But when the building was again complete, again Indradev was not happy. And then this process continued. And 5, 7, 8, 10 palaces were built. But Indradev was not happy. So at that time, Vishnu Bhagwan, God Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, he had to come in. So he came in front of Indradev in the form of a little boy. And he said that, what are you doing? So Indradev said that I want to build a palace as grand as I am. So that little boy said, Vishnuji said that, what are you going to do? There were many Indras before you, and there would be many Indras after you. There were many grand palaces built before, and there would be many grand palaces in the future. So what is the value of this grand palace? So now Indradev understood that in time, infinity, there is value for nothing. So today we
Unmute.
are,
What
today
you
we,
led?
so he understood that in time infinity, there is no value, because this seminar we are having today has a value now, because the concept of the registered valuer has arrived. Even while doing our valuation assignment, time will be a key concept, because the date of valuation would be very important, because the value is never constant. So today, if you build something, if you have something, it can have a value today, but the value keeps changing over time. But what is this value? If we observe in the nature for a moment, if we observe in the nature, and in the example that I gave, Indradev wanted to have value for himself. He was seeking value for himself, but he could not do that. But if we see in the nature, the plants, the human beings, everyone, we are enjoying the air, water, fire, everything. But this air, water, fire, they are not seeking value for themselves. They are not saying, I want to have some value, but still they are valuable for us, because they are giving some utility. In turn, if you see, these plants are again consumed by other animals, and these plants and animals are again consumed by much higher animals or other animals. So in this process, we find in nature the value chain. So everyone has his own value, but by seeking value, we cannot create value for ourselves. But then at the end of this value chain is a very interesting animal. That is the human beings, the most complicated ones. So we seek value, and that's why we want to create value for ourselves. But how do we do it? We have to build some utility for that. Otherwise, no one will value us. So that's why what human beings started doing, they started creating various goods and services. And then they started creating value for themselves. So if a manufacturing company has a goods, is building some goods, and that is important for the consumers, then it has a value. We are chartered accountants, our services are valuable. So that's how we create value for people. But then slowly we have to move in. Initially in the earlier days, there was barter system, we all knew. But then came the concept of money. And then in valuation, we have to term everything in the, we have to quantify everything in terms of money. So this is again one important thing. So while doing the valuation, whether the value is in dollars or Indian rupees or something else, would again be a very important concept. And in a way, we have understood that ultimately the value is not constant, and it has to be understood in the form of money in our commercial world, because the valuation that we would be doing ultimately has to be termed in terms of money. Now let us come into the concepts. We have gone through a story, and let us now understand the concepts. One thing we have understood, that valuation cannot be an exact science. This is because the utility for one thing would be different for other people. So for example, a plant gives us oxygen, and that's why it is very important to us and all the animals. But then those animals which are carnivorous and they do not live on plant, for them the value of the plant is only up till it gives its oxygen and shadow. But then for an animal who is also dependent on the plant, for him the value would be much more, because it also gets fruits from it, and on the other side it also gets the oxygen and the shadow. So that means from the angle of who is valuing, the valuation can change, because the need for value, the need for the utility is not the same for everyone. So valuation cannot be an exact science. While doing the valuation, we have to understand the circumstances, the purpose of the valuation very well, and only then it is possible. And valuation cannot always be mathematically done. There would be various assumptions while doing the valuation. Valuation is also an art for that matter. Valuation is very subjective, because for this I'll give an example at the middle of my deliberation. So valuation will also depend on various factors, as I have already said, and there could be various ways to look at it. So we will also go through these concepts. Friends, I am initially giving you an understanding of value, the important concepts in valuation, and towards the later end I'll be speaking about how to become a registered valuer, so that we can do the valuation. Because under the Companies Act there has been a change, and from 1st February 2019 only a registered valuer can do a valuation under the Companies Act and its incidental acts. Those are SEBI and Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. So it's the fact is that now only a registered valuer can do the valuation under the Companies Act. So we all chartered accountants were doing valuation earlier. However, we have to become a registered valuer first now. Now, there is a concept of valuation basis. So what are these valuation bases? A concept is fair value. So that means we are not going for the exact value. We are trying to fair value something. And we all know about the discounted cash flow methods. So basically, when we follow the discounted cash flow method, we actually ultimately find out the fair value of a property and not the exact market value or the cost value. Then there is participant specific value. Let me give an example for this. Already I have shared this in the terms of the examples that we find in the nature, but then let me also explain this commercially now. Let's say there is a building, a commercial building, and you have a small godown in that building. Now you want to expand your business. To expand your business, you want to buy another floor in that commercial building. Fine. If you get that space, you can build a bigger godown. Now there is another person who is 25 kilometers away from that commercial place, and he also is in the same line of business as you are in, and he also wants to have a godown in that same building. Now if you both are going to buy that floor in that building, I am sure that you would be willing to pay a higher amount than the person who is 25 kilometers away from that building, because you already have a space there. So if you get the other floor, your business, it will help your business much more. But that person has a manufacturing unit 25 kilometers away, so it can also find a godown anywhere else for itself. It will not pay a premium for the floor in that commercial building. So the participant specific value is very important. While doing a valuation, you also have to understand that who is interested in this subject assets that we are valuing. And the next is the liquidation value. This is very easy to understand. So if a person wants to liquidate a property, an asset, then what value he is getting in the market would be the liquidation value. Then there are two aspects in liquidation value that we will see in the next slide, while we will be understanding the valuation premises. So now there is again a concept of valuation premises. You might be thinking that why I am sharing these. There is a reason for me sharing these concepts first, because these are all there both in the international valuation standards and the valuation standards issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. So that is why it is important to understand these concepts. So valuation premises. So these basically talks about the conditions and circumstances, how an asset is deployed, how it is placed, the asset that we are going to value. So the first concept is that of highest and best use. So that means if an asset can be utilized in the best manner, what would be its value? So this is about the highest and best use. So those of you who are doing Ind AS, so you must have seen that in Ind AS 113, where fair valuation is spoken of, there it says that the fair value that you have to take should be the highest and best use. That means if that asset, see, an asset can be used in many manners, but when they are placed in a manner which gives the maximum value, would be its highest and best use. So under these premises, you will always be calculating the highest and best use, although that asset may not have been actually deployed in that fashion. Then comes the going concern value. So when we see the liquidation value and going concern value, then we very easily understand, being chartered accountants, that going concern will always give a higher value in general, because there is a possibility of future cash flows, future earnings. There is a brighter future there. So when you are valuing an asset that has a future, you will always be doing it on a going concern value, because you are not thinking of selling it. So once this theory is taken that the company is a going concern, you accordingly value its shares. And going concern is something that we understand very well, and even SA 570 is there, and we have to also report that about the going concern in our statutory audit reports these days. The next is the as is, where is value. So that means in the first case, we have learned about the highest and best use. That means a combination of assets could have been deployed in various manners. The one that gives the best use and the highest value was taken there. In the as is, where is value, we calculate the value only under the current circumstances in which the assets have been placed. The next comes orderly liquidation and forced transactions. So while discussing the valuation basis, I had mentioned that liquidation value again would have two premises. So one is the orderly liquidation, the other is the forced transaction. So while doing a valuation, we have to see whether the asset that we are valuing, if it has to be sold, whether there is time for selling it, That means, fine, I have to sell an asset, but I have 6 months time to sell it, so I can find better buyers. So in that case, I'll consider that as an orderly liquidation. That means I'm selling it off, but in a proper manner. But there could be other situations where one has to go for a forced transaction. That means there is an agreement and one has violated that, and according to that, now he has to part away with the asset, pay his debt, or there could be some other situation where you need to sell the asset in any case. So then in that case, the premises that you would be considering would be that of forced transactions. That means you are not going to get the value of the asset that otherwise you could have got. So obviously the value under the forced transaction would be much lower than that of the orderly liquidation. So friends, these are the valuation premises. Now let us understand about the significant elements. So is there any question till now?
All are unmuted. They must raise their hands up.
Is there any question? Because see, I am only trying to share the concepts through stories and other means. So there could be some confusion. So if there is any question till now, maybe we can discuss on anything that comes in your mind, or I can move ahead.
Move ahead.
Okay, okay. So let us proceed.
Yes.
Shumanda, you can mute others again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deepen.
So let us understand the significant elements in valuation. So when we are doing the valuation, there should be a possibility of a transaction or an actual transaction that is happening. Friends, many a times when we open the television and we go to the Discovery Channel and we find that they are showing on the screen a deer or a goat, and they are also showing a tiger. So we start thinking that, okay, fine, now probably this tiger is going to chase this goat and let's see what happens. So then that means our mind starts thinking of a possible transaction, that something might happen or may not happen, but then there is a possibility. So in valuation, we have to always see that there has to be a possibility of a transaction. If there is no possibility of a transaction, a valuation cannot happen. The next would be the valuation date, because you see that in the first example, when I was speaking of Indradev, he understood that in time infinity, there is no value for what he is building. So valuation date is very important. So what is the value of an asset today? If I am valuing it today, on today's date, then the value, what is the value of the asset today? It might so happen that when I am doing a valuation today, the person who has given the assignment might require a value of the asset as on 31st March 2020 or some other date. So while doing that valuation, I have to consider the value as on that date, not as on today. Because if we value it as on today, then we will be making mistakes. We have to consider all the circumstances that were present, were existing on the date on which the value is required for the asset, and not that as on today. So whenever you do a valuation assignment, be very careful about two things. The valuation assignment, in the report you will have two dates. One would be the valuation date, that means the date for which you are doing valuation. The other date would be the report date, that means the current date on which you are signing the valuation report. This is like the financial statements, because while signing a financial statement, now we would be giving the balance sheet date as 31st March 2020. Similarly, the valuation date would be of that date. Never consider the valuation date as that of doing the assignment, of the date of assignment. No, never. That is the report date. And you have to mention the valuation date, that means for which date you are carrying out the valuation. And these are also part of the standards, and we have to carefully mention them. We cannot omit any of them. And obviously, if there is a possibility of a transaction, there would be parties actual or likely to the transaction. So that is not a big thing. So these are the significant elements of valuation. Now, what are the factors of valuation? According to the ICAI evaluation standards, there are two ways to look at it, the method and the perspective. So under the method, there are discounted cash flow method, dividend discount model. So we know that discounted cash flow is about discounting all the possible future cash flows of a company. Dividend discount model would be required to value the equity of a company. So whatever the possibilities of future dividends are there, we discount the future dividends. Residual income model. So I already have a normal value for my company. So if there is a possibility of having something extra, then I would be discounting it on that and adding that discounted value to my existing value to get the residual ultimate value of the entity. And earnings growth model again would be, we know that about the Gordon method. So it talks basically about that. And in the perspective, there could be two ways to look at an entity: enterprise value and equity value. So when we speak of enterprise value, it actually includes the debts in it, the long-term debts in it. So basically, we are valuing the whole enterprise. It's not only about the equities. And there could be a valuation where you are doing the equity valuation. And we also know about cost of equity, because while doing the discounting to calculate equity value, we must know the cost of equity, the expected return that the shareholders expect from the business. I was talking about subjectivity in valuation. So when Alexander arrived in India, so his men found that there were these peculiar people in India who were carrying out different yogas. So they came to know that these are all yogas, and they found that there are some people, they are hanging from the tree, doing nothing throughout the day, eating the fruits from the trees and no clothes on their body. So they were confused. What happened? What are these people doing? So they were amazed. And on the contrary, they had been running from Greece to all over India. They had been conquering so many countries. And they find at the end, there are people who are doing nothing. So they got confused and asked someone, what's happening? Now, let us look at this in a different manner, this story. Now in Greece, this Alexander and his people, they believed in only one life. So they wanted to achieve everything in one life. So whatever is there, I have to achieve. But at the end of the life, what happens that whatever you achieve is your ultimate performance, because it gets divided by one, that is one life. So that's why you keep running after achieving something. And these people had a different concept whom they met. They said that once I die, I am going to get a rebirth. And I would be taking birth again and again. So I have infinite lives to live. So whatever I achieve now, and I keep achieving, when it will be divided by infinity, my performance would be zero. So why should I do anything? Why should I have any activity? So both were valuing their lives, but the way they were valuing was fully different. So they thought that I have one life, so I have to achieve as much as possible in one life. And these people believed in infinite lives. And that's why they did not do anything, because ultimately their performance, they believed that would be zero at the end of the day. So both were valuing lives. One were valuing it very high and others were valuing it to be zero. But then this is the subjectivity in valuation. So it's about how we look, how we believe that we can use an asset to make the best out of it. So if Reliance is interested in an asset and some other company, they would be looking to that asset in different manners. They will not value that asset in the same manner. They will have different perspectives. They will have different needs. That the asset would be serving their different purposes. The utilities that is the utility that they take out of that asset would be different for different people, and that's why the valuation would be different. So, but then what are the valuation approaches and methods? How is valuation done? In the commercial world today, I said we already have valuation standards, both international valuation standards, and in fact, ICAI had taken initiative to issue valuation standards 2-3 years back. Although the ICAI valuation standards are recommendatory in nature, but one valuer who is a registered valuer has to follow either the international valuation standards or the valuation standards that are as prescribed here from time to time. So I'll be speaking about them also. Now let us understand the methods or approaches to valuation. There are three approaches. One is the market approach, one is the income approach, and one is the cost approach. While doing the valuation, we have to discuss all these approaches, and we also have to select one approach considering the circumstances. Considering the circumstances in which the valuation is being done. We have to discuss that method, and then we have to apply that to find out the valuation. So let us know about these approaches a little more in detail. Market approach. So one is the market price method. So now if someone comes and asks me that I want to do the valuation of Reliance Industries Limited, and I want to know the value as on 31st March 2020. So one of the best approaches, I think, Shumanda, you need to mute the person who got unmuted.
Unmute yourself, Dwayne.
Okay, thank you. So if we have to value Reliance Industries Limited as on 31st March 2020, market price method would be a very apt method that we can follow, because it's a listed company and we will be having its values on the different stock exchanges on 31st March 2020. So it would be a very easy method to do the market price method for a listed company. But the approach would not be the same if I have to value some other company. So there could be another method called the comparable companies multiple. So we all know about the price earning ratio. What this suggests? So if the value of a company, say Reliance Industries Limited, is 1,000 rupees per share, and the earnings per share of that company, EPS, is 10 rupees. So that means the company's price earning ratio is 1,000 divided by 10. That means 100 times. Now, if we are valuing an unlisted company and we know that it is in this specific industry, and there are 5 companies which are comparable to it, which are listed, so we can calculate the price earning ratios of those companies and understand that what is the average price earning ratio, and accordingly we now know the earnings per share of this company that we are valuing, and we can use that price earning ratio to find out the value of this company. So that would be a comparable companies multiple, where we are using a multiple of a different similar nature of company, applying it to find out the value of the subject company under valuation. Then comes the comparable transactions multiple. Now again, this could be based on sales, this could be based on a key indicator that is there in the company. So for a moment, let's say that there are a few industries where it's not possible to have price earning ratio because the price earning ratio would not give you a true picture. So if a business is in the real estate sector or in a sector which is now in losses, so then how will you get a price earning ratio? It's not possible. So there you can consider the sales, the revenue, the gross revenue. So you can compare it with a listed company. So you know the value of the listed company, you know its turnover, and you know that the subject company's revenue. So you can again use that ratio to find the value of this subject company. So this is called the comparable transactions multiple. So where you compare the transactions and use the value to find out ratios and then value the unlisted company or the subject assets. The next concept is very important while doing a valuation, that is of discounts and control premium. Now let's say Umakanto sir is the shareholder of a company where he owns 49% shares, and Pramod Puthal sir has Pramod Puthal sir has 2% of shares of that company. So Umakanto sir has 49% shares, Pramod sir has 2% shares. Now another person who is going out wants to sell 2% of his shares, 2% of the shares of the company. Now both Umakanto sir and Pramod sir are interested in those shares. Now now you calculate the value of the shares, but then there would be a concept of discounts and control premium. So if Pramod sir believes that he should pay 100 rupees for the share, Umakanto sir would be willing to pay more. He would be paying a control premium because he knows that he has 49% shares, and once he can buy those 2% shares, he will be a 51% shareholder in that company and he would be controlling that company. So he would be paying a control premium. And from the other angle, if we would be saying that Umakanto sir would be paying 150, so we have to discount the price because another person who would not be getting the control in the company would obviously be paying less for the shares of those companies. So discounts and control premium is something that you have to understand and accordingly use during the valuation. So these are the general concepts under the market approach. Let us move to the next approach. The next approach is income approach, and I think this is very commonly understood by chartered accountants because we have been doing this even in the CA final examinations very much, and then this is very much used in the valuations that is carried out even under the Rule 11 UA many a times, although these days we chartered accountants are not permitted to do the calculation under the discounted cash flow method. Only a merchant banker can do that under the income tax law. However, this commonly used approach is discounted cash flows. That is very easy to understand for us. So we know our expected returns, and we know we are calculating the possible future cash flows, and then we discount those cash flows and calculate the current value of those cash flows. So this method is called the discounted cash flows, where we, for a going concern, we find out the value as on today by following this method. Then comes the relief from royalty. So say there is a trademark or a patent or a situation where you have some mining rights and you are paying royalty to do the mining, or to say you were paying some price every month or annually, you are paying a royalty to enjoy an asset. Now if you want to buy that asset, then we follow this relief from royalty method. So the royalty that you will not be paying in the future has to be discounted, and the current value of that saving has to be calculated, and obviously you would be willing to pay something equal or less than this discounted value that you have calculated from the savings of royalty. Then multi-period excess earnings. So say I have a normal earnings that I am carrying out. Generally, every year I am having a normal profit. Now if I buy a goodwill, buy an intangible asset, something of that kind which would add value to my business, and this will help me to earn more in the future, so I would be calculating the excess earnings that I would be getting. So these methods are almost the same, only the concepts are different, because here you will be calculating the excess earnings that you would be doing over the years, and you would again be discounting them to find out the value, the current value, and that would be the value that you would be willing to pay to buy that right, which would help you to earn more in the future. With and without are again the same concepts. So if you calculate something with the right that you are buying or with the asset that you have, and what would be the earnings if you do not have that asset. So without that asset, without that right, or without that patent, whatever it may be, so then you again get a differential earning, and you again discount them to understand the value that you are willing to pay for it. Then comes the option pricing model. So this is generally used for calculating options, especially in the equity markets. We know about derivatives where there are options and futures. So the option pricing model is there. So that's a mathematical model. It's a formula where whenever there are options in an asset, in a right that you are purchasing, you use that method to do the calculation. So these are mainly the income approaches. The next approach is the cost approach. So there can be a replacement cost or reproduction cost method. So if I have to replace an asset, that means buy an asset by replacing it. So I would be getting the cost price and that would be the value. So it's a very easy thing to do. Or if I have to build it by myself, so I'll build it myself. I will reproduce that asset myself. So there I would be calculating the requirement of raw materials, labor and other incidental costs to know what could be my cost. So these are the two cost approaches: replacement cost, that means replacing, substituting the asset by something, so the value of that substitute, or reproducing that asset. So now friends, we have completed the different approaches of valuation, that is the market approach, income approach and cost approach. So is there any question till now?
Sir, the question is in the chat box, sir.
Okay, okay. So I think this one question is there, right? From Mr. Shamanto Ashokda. For unlisted company who will value the shares of a director shareholder who want to sell all its shares to a newcomer director, is it compulsory to appoint valuer or CA in practice is sufficient? Sir, if a shareholder wants to sell its shares, the Companies Act does not require any valuation. If a shareholder wants to share his shares, whether he is a director or non-director, there is no requirement of any valuation under the Companies Act. So when I say there is no requirement of valuation under Companies Act, it means there is no requirement of a registered valuer. Now if we move to the income tax law, then there is a requirement of valuation, which is not to be done by a registered valuer. It has to be as per Rule 11 UA. So as per Rule 11 UA, you will find that the method has been prescribed there. So a chartered accountant can do that. And under Rule 11 UA, whenever a valuation has to be done by following the discounted cash flow method, then a merchant banker has to be appointed. So if you are following the net asset method as per the Rule 11 UA, then there is no requirement of a registered valuer. A chartered accountant can do it. And that valuation is also important because that will impact, this is as required under section 56, because if you are selling the shares at a higher price than the price that as per the valuation of income tax, then it has to be considered in your price. And if you are selling it for a lower price, then also the dimmed price for your selling would be the higher value, that is the valuation price. And for a person, that comes in capital gains. And for a person who is buying the shares, if he is paying lower than the value of the shares that has been calculated as per income tax law, then again that will become a part of his income from other sources.
Yeah, right.
So, right. So that is the concept. There is no requirement of a registered valuer under Rule 11 UA. If you are following the asset method, then a chartered accountant can do that. If discounted cash flow method is required to be followed, there is a if you follow the discounted cash flow method, you need a merchant banker for that.
Actually, I am selling all my shares to some persons who is interested in to join the company. I will be released from the company.
No,
and he will
fine. That is fine. But for that purpose, there is no requirement of Companies Act to do any valuation, because the company
Yeah,
does not
right,
need any
right.
valuation. Only
Okay,
income
okay.
tax will get impacted.
ঠিক আছে। Thank you, thank you.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
Welcome,
okay.
sir. Friends, there are so many ways of life, so many religions. These are different ways of life, ultimately living our life. But then somehow they needed to be, there should have been some coding. What should we do? What to follow? So we know that we have the Bhagavad Gita, we have the Bible, we have the Quran. So every religion has its own book, own holy book. So that's how they have codified them. Sometimes back, Ranjit ji was speaking on the values of the profession, and then he said that when Mr. R.C. Cooper, the then president who introduced Code of Ethics, so he said that ultimately we have to follow the values, but then they felt the requirement of codifying them. That means in a written format, in a written form, so that people can read and understand. Similarly, there are so many religious books. So how can there be no valuation standards? There has to be standards for valuation also, because we have already seen that valuation is subjective, and since it is subjective, if there are no standards, the valuation can be done in a very different manner by different valuers. So there was a requirement of valuation standards, and we all chartered accountants know this very much, because this same happens for accounting and auditing, and that is why we have accounting standards, auditing standards. Similarly, there are valuation standards. Now, for all the valuers here in India, so we are speaking commercially, so I am not speaking about the valuers who would be doing land and building, or they value something under the bankers law, they do some valuation, or someone is doing some valuation under a law where he is valuing any building or something. Here I am speaking about the valuation that is required under Companies Act 2013. So which is done by a registered valuer. Now, for us, there are two sets of standards in front of us. One is the International Valuation Standards, and the other is the ICAI Valuation Standards. Here you will find in this chart that I have colored the common standards in the same color. So if you see International Valuation Standards, scope of work 101. In ICAI Valuation Standards, you will find scope of work, analysis and evaluation in 201, standard 201. So similarly, I have colored them. So I'll be sharing this PPT with you. So later on, you can also go through them. That is not a problem. So now these international valuation standards were already there. And in January, they have made some modifications. And from January 2020, the new set of international valuation standards are there. And they have included this new 220 valuation standard 220 for non-financial liabilities. So prior to the January version, you will find that this standard number 220 was missing. And in the year 2018, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India also found that this concept of registered valuer is gaining pace and it is going to come into India. So they also issued standards. Now we will find a typical difference between these standards. You will find that under the international valuation standards, there are these non-financial liabilities, plant and equipment, real property interests, and development property. But our institute has not issued any standards on these. There is a big reason for that. That is because we chartered accountants, we cannot become valuers for land and building and plant and machinery. So in India, this concept of registered valuer, it has three kinds of asset classifications. Like I am a registered valuer for the securities or financial assets. Similarly, there could be an engineer who has gone through the examination process and has become a registered valuer under the land and building or the plant and machinery. So Institute of Chartered Accountants of India believed that let us not move into the domain of others, and that's why they did not have develop any standard for plant and equipment, real property interests and development property. When I will be discussing about the concept of RVO, Registered Valuers Organization, I'll be again speaking of this difference, why ICAI has done this. So now let us speak about the opportunities in general for valuation. Here I have not spoken about the registered valuer only. So there is a scope for valuation under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Because whenever a resolution professional is appointed, for the subject assets, the resolution professional has to develop, he has to appoint valuers for each asset class, 2 valuers for each asset class. So he will be appointing 6 valuers in that case. The next are the requirements under SEBI. Then there are requirements under the RBI guidelines. There is requirement under income tax, what we were discussing in a few minutes back. Then there are requirements under the Companies Act. So we have a lot of opportunities to do valuation as chartered accountants and also as registered valuers. I'll be sharing with you one attachment. Let me share that first. So I'll be sharing this one in the chat box. It might take some time. So I have shared this valuation opportunities Word file in the chat box, so you can download it from here. So the opportunities that is there under for a registered valuer, that means one who is registered with IBBI. These are the valuation opportunities, so you can go through them. Registered. হ্যাঁ আরেকটা প্রশ্ন করেছেন, there is another question. Registered valuer is must for value of a share of an unlisted company when the company requires issue of additional shares, right? This is correct. Whenever there is a share allotment or fresh issue of shares, there is a requirement of valuation under the Companies Act, and this has to be only done by a registered valuer. But then you cannot use that value for the income tax purpose. You have to have your separate calculations under income tax for the purpose of income tax. So these are the broader areas. So the one that has been just spoken of, fresh issue and transfer of shares, business combinations, mergers and amalgamations, employee stock options, valuation under IBC where fair value and liquidation values have to be calculated. Then under Ind AS, all those companies which are under Ind AS, there is a requirement of valuation to be done, especially when Ind AS 113 is affected, that itself is on fair value. So Ind AS 103, 102, 109 and so on and so forth, these are all, they speak of valuation requirements. So there is a huge opportunity for valuation in these areas. Now I already said that registered valuer would be doing the valuations under the Companies Act 2013, IBC 2016 and its regulations, and also under SEBI. Now friends, on 18th October 2017, so before that, let's go prior to 18th October 2017, when the Companies Act 2013 was brought in, from that time the regulators thought that there should be a separate valuer who would be doing valuation under the Companies Act. Finally, on 18th October 2017, this section 247 was commenced, and the company's registered valuers and valuation rules 2017 was notified. So from here, the concept of registered valuer set in. But then what happened? There was dearth of valuers. So many had not passed at that time, and even the examinations did not start. The examination started only after 1st April 2018. So that's why they did not make it mandatory initially. Only after a long time, say around 1.5 years, on 1st February 2019, it was finally made mandatory. So for all assignments from 1st February 2019, under Companies Act, wherever valuation is required, only a registered valuer can carry out the valuation. So since wherever there was a requirement, we were doing valuation earlier as chartered accountants, we must be mindful of this fact that it can only be done by a registered valuer now. If we are still doing the valuations as a chartered accountant only, then we are at a mistake. We have to first become registered valuers. Now, if you want to become a registered valuer, I would request you to first visit the site of IBBI. So www.ibbi.gov.in. This is the site of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. After going there, you can find out the two menus, services and examination. So under that, you will get in details about the registered valuer course, the syllabus, and the examination. I will also speak a little about it so that you get a brief idea from me how to become a registered valuer. I already mentioned if you want to become a registered valuer, you also have to choose the asset classification for which you want to become a registered valuer. And each of them requires separate set of skills and qualifications for us so that we can become a registered valuer under that class of assets. So if someone has done BSc or MSc or engineering, and after that he has become a chartered accountant, it's a very good thing for him. He can pass all the examinations and become registered valuers for land and building, plant and machinery, and securities or financial assets. But generally, we chartered accountants will go for these securities or financial assets only, because we have the required qualification for this. Now, so I already said there is a requirement of qualification and experience, and we have to pass an examination. Before passing this examination, we have to take a 50 hours training from any of the registered valuers organization who is offering the course for that asset class for which you want to appear. So like Institute of Chartered Accountants of India only takes the classes, gives the coaching for the 50 hours training only for the asset class securities or financial assets, and not for land and building and plant and machinery, because our RVO, the ICAI RVO, has not taken the license for the other two. And that is the reason that I was mentioning that those standards covered in international valuation standards, which refer to plant and machinery, then real estate properties and development properties, they were not covered by ICAI while issuing the ICAI valuation standards. So after passing the examination, then you have to become the member of the RVO first, any of the RVO that you want, and then you have to apply with IBBI to become the registered valuer who will ultimately give you the license. Only thing is, here there will be a two-tier system. There will be IBBI at the top and the registered valuers organization. So you become member of the registered valuers organization, and you also get the ultimate license from the authority. The authority will not do anything. They will only control everything, and the registered valuers organization will see that you are complying with everything. And IBBI will have a higher authority over the RVO also. You can say this is like a university and college system, where the IBBI is the university and the RVOs are the colleges who impart the education. So any postgraduate having 3 years experience, or a graduate having 5 years experience, or a chartered accountant, cost accountant, or company secretary with 3 years experience can become a registered valuer. He is qualified to become a registered valuer. Mind it, this and has been removed. So previously it said that CA and postgraduate or graduate and 3 years experience. But now this and has been removed because efforts were put in. It has been made or, because nowadays many chartered accountants could be there who has not gone for his graduations, because ICAI is allowing that. So all my chartered accountant friends who have covered already 3 years of practice, they can easily go pass the exam after taking the 50 hours training and registered themselves as a registered valuer. So 50 hours training, fine. And after passing the after doing the 50 hours training, you will get a certificate from the RVO. Then if you go to the IBBI site under the examination, you will find that it will take you to the site of NSE, National Stock Exchange, from where many online examinations are given. Then you have to upload your certificate, training certificate there, and you will have to choose your examination for registered valuer under the class of financial assets and securities. This examination you have to pass, then you can apply to become a member. The syllabus is given in the site of IBBI. When you take the 50 hours training, even the RVO will provide you with all the materials. Now, what kind of examination is this exam? So this would be a multiple choice question examination. 100 marks examination, pass marks is 60%, and there is a negative marking, 1/4. 1/4 negative marking is there. 93 questions are asked. 93 questions. 7 questions have 2 marks each allotted to them, and the other 86 are of 1 mark each. So total 100, and you have a choice not to answer the question, a few questions if you so desire, and ultimately with this pattern you have to get 60%, and this involves both theory and calculations, although I would say the calculations would be around 20%, so, and the rest 80% or 70% would be around theory. The questions which has 2 marks each assigned to them are basically case laws. So there would be 2 case laws in the exam. From the case law, they will ask you 7 questions. They will have 2 marks each allotted to them. So friends, these were the ideas that I had with me regarding right way, starting from value, then the valuation basis, the valuation premises, the valuation approaches, and then understanding the methods of valuation, understanding the key elements of valuation, and then we also understood about what are the opportunities in valuation for us chartered accountants, and then the opportunities will expand if we register ourselves as registered valuers. And for that there is an examination process, and I am sure there could be many questions regarding how to become a registered valuer. So I have come to the end of my slide. So now if there are questions, I would be happy to take them.